Welcome on into this edition of Warchant TV. You thought I was going to say Wake Up Warchant, but I'm not. He's Corey Clark, senior and lead writer for Warchant.com. The story that he has authored can be found over on Warchant.com. It's even linked at the bottom of this video. Hit the thumbs up button, by the way, and help subscribe, help start the movement, all that good stuff to promote us here on YouTube. We're doing our position previews. Corey, you drew wide receivers. I want to give you some credit, but I think I have to give most of the credit to Ira. I think in the midst of all the chaos of 2020 and the underperforming Florida State football team, everybody piled on the defense. I think like Ira at least was the first one in my recollection that was like, hey, this wide receiver crew hasn't looked all that well, but you took that idea and you know, put more nuance to it and were more articulate in describing it. What were your thoughts on that wide receiver core from 2020?
It should be no surprise that I'm more articulate than Ira. That goes without saying. I think anybody watching this understands that. That was Aslan taking that shot at you, Ira. I don't understand where that came from. Look, the wide receivers were a disappointment in 2020. That would be kind. Other than Tamorrion Terry against Notre Dame, one game out of the 9, they were abysmal. There was nothing productive, redeeming about them. Pokey had a nice play against North Carolina. Like, you can pick out a few nice plays, but overall the wide receivers were just completely nondescript, right? Especially when Terry left. When he was done, they did almost nothing. And what I'm interested in is how much of that, and again, people that listen to our show and read me on Warchant know that I'm a big fan of Jordan Travis as a football player. But how much of it was having subpar quarterback play throwing the football, and that's from James Blackman to Purdy to Rodemaker to Travis. How much of that was on the quarterbacks and how much of that was on the receivers not being open? We don't watch the all 22. So I'm sure there are some one-on-one battles that these receivers won where the quarterback either didn't see it or didn't get the ball to him on time. But you have to think that will improve next year, whether it's one of the older, the former Noles from last year, the returning guys, playing well enough to beat out Mackenzie Milton, or it's Mackenzie Milton. The quarterback play will be improved. So, but I feel like there's only a ceiling the quarterback play can have if the receivers don't get better. And overall, the receivers just did not do much at all in 2020. I mean, really at all. If you take away Pokey had 30 catches and 3 touchdowns. The rest of the receivers on the roster combined for like 17 and 1 touchdown. Just nothing, no production at all. Keyshawn didn't have a season of note at all. And then the freshmen did next to nothing. So, or actually just frankly did nothing. So there's a lot of question marks coming into this season, a lot. It's a position that has a lot of room, a lot of potential, and certainly a lot of room for growth and getting better.
Let me ask you that then. I mean, that's what I was thinking about when you were rattling off, I guess, all the sort of, foibles of the wide receiving core. Does this segment, maybe more than any, have the most sort of, I guess, headroom to grow from where they're at to hitting a ceiling?
Probably. Look, you get it. You've got, I think you're going to have 6 freshmen on the roster, counting the 3 that were here last year that now become redshirt freshmen. 4, I guess. We're still not quite sure what Corey Wren's deal is. But I'm putting it receiver, Ja'Kai Douglas. So you have a bunch of guys, plus the 3 that are coming in, that have done really nothing at the wide receiver position. But I do think there's some talent there. There's certainly speed. And a guy like Darian Williamson, Portier, they have the bodies. They have the body type, you would think, to be a really good receiver. Their body types are impressive. We just haven't seen the production. But again, I think it's the chicken and the egg when it comes to having a quarterback. If you have a good quarterback that throws the ball on time, that's going to make the receivers play so much better. It's going to look better. But yes, I do think because it's so young, with 7 or 8 unproven guys, that if 3 of them can turn into something like legitimate ACC caliber, legitimate Florida State caliber wide receivers, then yes, the production and the look of the position group is going to improve dramatically.
What do you think about a guy like Destin Hill, true freshman? He won't be on campus until the summer. Would you think that maybe Malik McClain, Joshua Burrell, guys that are already on campus, is that enough of a leg up on him? Guys like Brian Robinson, who played sparingly in 2020, are those guys that you still think probably are better poised to contribute in 2021? Or do you think Hill shows the explosion and the yak and all that kind of stuff that you've been talking about when we were watching these games in the press box for the last 3 years?
That's a tough answer, but it's an interesting question because I think we all think that Destin Hill might be the most talented of the three incoming guys. He's ranked the highest. I mean, Malik McClain's ranked high too. He's got real speed, like legitimate speed. So if he comes on the scene after not having a spring and works himself into the rotation of like the first 3 or 4 guys, well, the first way you look at that is, man, that's really good news. This guy might be a star. He could be a difference maker quickly. But the bad news to that is, wait, you're telling me in 3 weeks this guy leapfrogged 6 guys that have been on the roster for 6 months or a year? So what does that say about the guys that are already here? If a kid that's coming in with no experience at all in the college game makes an immediate impact and leapfrogs the guys I mentioned earlier, like Williamson, Wren, Ja'Kai Douglas, Portier, if he can leapfrog them, and even the 2 guys that are already here, that's a great sign and a bad sign at the same time. Because again, you're going to need these freshmen. You can't just have one dude. You need 3 or 4. You hope to hit on all of them, but that's not happening. But you hope that 3 or 4 can really play. What gives you pause is even last year when Tamori and Terry left and other guys weren't doing anything, those freshmen had a hard time making any sort of impact at all. So maybe these newcomers leapfrog them immediately and they get left behind, or they take a step up with a full season, a full off season, a spring practice. They've been through a college football season before. It's going to be really interesting how that shakes out. I can't recall a time since I've been covering Florida State or just watching Florida State where they've had these kind of numbers that are so young. Like legitimately 7 guys, 8 guys you could say are freshman wide receivers. And you have what? You have Keyshawn and Pokey are your veterans.
Yeah. And
Jordan Young. So it's going to be those freshmen are going to have to play. It's going to be interesting to see who works themselves to the top, but it should have makes for some great competition, legitimately.
Last one on the way out, Corey. You mentioned about leaders need to be really good players. Always helps when some of your best players are your leaders. Keyshawn Helton's a guy that we really like, just in terms of what he brings to a team, character-wise. He was not 100%, we don't think, or hopefully that's not what he looks like post-op at 100%. Is he a guy that you think can have more impact with the season of health, or do you think the infusion of a guy like Andrew Parchment is more likely to create some gains in the short term, I guess, for 2021?
I think that's both, man. Keyshawn Helton had a disappointing year in 2020, but I'm not going to say that's just who he is. We've seen enough. Before he got hurt against Clemson in 19, he was having a nice year, again, with not great quarterback play. So with the quarterback play being amped up and improved, you have to assume a slot guy, a possession guy, a yak guy like Keyshawn Helton should improve as well, and he could become a legitimate part of this offense. And yes, I just think a guy like him that just seems like beloved. He certainly seems like a really good teammate. I know the coaches love him. That would have such a great impact to have him, a guy like him, be your leader. Because like I mentioned, you've got 8 freshmen. You've got guys that got to learn from somebody. Keyshawn Helton, I think, is a great dude to be a leader and take the lead of a room like that. But it doesn't matter if you're only catching 1 ball a game for 7 yards and dropping passes over the middle. You've got to have production too, or it's going to fall on deaf ears. So I do think Keyshawn Helton has a chance to be the leader of that segment. But yes, I'm looking for Parchment to be the guy. I mean, again, there's nobody on this team, I don't believe. Maybe Keyshawn lucked into one or Pokey lucked into one at some forgotten game that's even had 1 100-yard receiving effort on this roster. And Parchment had 3 in 1 year for Kansas. So this guy, and he's the number 1 dude. So this guy knows what it's like to be a number 1 receiver. None of these guys do. And I want to see, I think he's going to be a big, big addition to this wide receiver group. He's done it. He's been there. None of these guys have accomplished much of anything in college. This guy has, even at flipping Kansas.
March 9th, tentative start for spring football season. Warchant.com getting you ready. Corey Clark again, full outline of the wide receiver position, rather. I was doing so good, Corey. Almost threw a perfect game for one.
You want to start over? You want to take another shot at it?
It's all at warchant.com. The story is linked in the video below. Thanks so much for watching. He's Corey. I'm Aslan. Stay connected to warchant.com, the ultimate Seminole sports.